Hello, Freshworks community. Thanks for joining us today for our first fireside chat. I am Caitlin Bate, Senior Director of Global Customer Experience at Freshworks, and I am today's host with this fireside chat with our industry expert, CX expert, Shep Hyken. Thank you and welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me, Caitlin.
Awesome. So I wanted to start today by talking about a lot has changed in this last year. So as we think about CX and where we are today from even 14 months ago, what do you think has changed in the way that we buy, sell, consume, and service goods and services and software?
Sure. So I'm going to give you kind of a tricky answer, and then I'm going to give you the answer you probably really want me to share. Okay. And it's like people say, what's changed? Nothing has really changed from the standpoint of what the customer expects. They expect at the end of their journey or any time throughout their journey for it to be a pleasant one. I wrote a book about 2.5 years ago titled The Convenience Revolution. And what was really fascinating is these were breakthrough kind of ideas. I identified 6 principles of convenience. Well, guess what happened? The pandemic forced companies to become more convenient. See, convenience is what customers wanted. They didn't quite realize they wanted it as much until the pandemic hit, and they realized, well, I can't go to the car dealership to go buy the car that I need, and the car dealership said, hey, you know what? We'll bring the car to you. Now, prior to the pandemic, that was a highly specialized high-end service that only the most expensive car dealerships would offer. Where now, I mean, if you want to buy a Toyota or you want to buy a Lexus, you want to buy a Mercedes, they all were doing that type of convenient experience. So what really has happened, though, in the end is customers still want it to be positive. How we deal with it has changed a little bit. And also recognize that whatever happened in the last 12 to 14 months would have happened anyway without the pandemic. What the pandemic did was accelerate customers' expectations to a higher level. There was a company out there prior to the pandemic that was just resetting customers' expectations over probably the last almost 10 to 20 years. So, Caitlin, I'm going to ask you a question, and we'll see if you get it right. Because this is not set up for those that are listening in on the show. Who is the most convenient, easiest company that you do business with on a regular basis, most likely?
I mean, I shop on Amazon every day.
Exactly.
So for me,
ding, ding, ding. That is the correct answer. Thanks for playing the game. And so what happened is I call it the Amazonation of business. And talk about a convenient company. Wow, they nailed it. And now companies are realizing just how important that level of convenience really is. So I think that's the word of the pandemic, is creating customer convenience and making it easier to do business with.
I completely agree. I also think that, so one thing I'm curious to get your thoughts on is with the fact that those were things that companies were doing before to specialize and differentiate, those are now table stakes. So those are things, what are the new things that people can do to really stand out and have that distinguishing factor?
Sure. So, and I love it. You nailed it. So customer service used to be something that helped differentiate you. Then customer service became table stakes. Convenience became the differentiator. You could have great service, but when you level convenience on top, I have a report. I'm going to see if I can grab it. Here it is. I've got a new one coming out in the next couple of months, but I call it the Achieving Customer Amazement Report. And just before the pandemic, this came out. And I'm actually going to find my glasses, which are right here. And I'm going to share with you an interesting stat. So 62% of customers are willing to pay more for customer service. We always knew that they would pay more for service. That was a differentiator. When you create convenient service, that number goes to 69%. So you throw convenience. And if that convenience includes delivery, it jumps up to almost 91%.
Wow.
So think about it. Now, I don't know if you remember prior to the pandemic, if you ordered Chinese food, okay, they would bring it to you in a little bag in a box. It was delicious, and they didn't charge you for delivery. When's the last time you didn't pay for delivery?
Yeah, right.
Everybody's paying for delivery. And you know what? They're happy to do it because it's convenient and they're willing to pay for that convenience. So I want to get back to your original question. And if you can remind me what was because I got off track.
I think it was just, so if now the things that companies were doing to differentiate themselves are now table stakes, what can they do now? How can they be more forward looking to the next?
Yeah. So here's where we're going right now. So we recognize convenience is really important. I now want everybody to start thinking digital.
Yeah.
What is that self-service? What does that technology look like? What is giving control to the customer? Yet at the same time, making them feel like at any time, if you want to talk to one of our agents, we can make that happen seamlessly. Ideally, it's an omni-channel experience versus a multi-channel. You can have your social channels and everything, but if I have to start over when I finally talk to that agent, I'm going to be a little frustrated. But if you can seamlessly bring me into a conversation, I think that's going to be powerful. I think the company, and I'll give you an example. I won't tell you the name of the company, but their initials are GoDaddy. Oh, I just told you who they were. Okay. And actually, you're in Arizona right now, and they are based in Arizona, ironically. So this is what's cool. I have been saying this for years about GoDaddy. When they're like the only customer service support people that I call that I can't wait to call them. I mean, I think about it. Oh, I've got to call customer support. That means I'm going to be on hold. That means I got to go find my account number. That means I got to make sure I have my social security number, give them the name of my firstborn child, whatever. All of those have to happen. Well, and of course, I'm going to have to wait on hold. Okay. And I'm going to hate that. And I'm going to get somebody that may or may not know what they do. Well, let me tell you, GoDaddy for years has created this experience that you hardly ever have to wait more than just a few seconds before somebody connects with you. Of course, they have the technology that we can call you back, and or you can hold and they tell you how long it is. The agents are knowledgeable. You want to be so good that people say, you know what, I love calling technical support. I'm just going to call them just because I have somebody to talk to today. No, that's not true. But seriously, how good can you be? Can you be that good? Because most of the time, people, and I actually, in my new survey, I have a question. Would you rather go to the dentist or call customer support? It's a simple yes or no. So, but that's where we have to be. We have to be so good at what we do that, people love every aspect of it. And giving more control of the customer, we need to do more of that. And think about what Amazon's done. Every piece of the interaction that you have, the transaction, when you finally get your merchandise, everything is in your control. They've given you all the tools. Easy to use website. You can compare product. You can compare pricing. Amazon will even tell you there's other companies out there that are in their marketplace that have lower pricing than their prime pricing. Your choice if you want to do business with it. They give you everything, and it's all in your control. And it's easy.
So I think that, CX leaders were in this place where they've been trying to push the digital transformation within their companies. And it was always kind of, oh yeah, we'll get there. Maybe they weren't securing the budget. Pandemic hits, all of a sudden they're expected to have these things implemented right away. But a lot of these things are actually things that are driven by product or things that have to happen in product to truly make it seamless. What are some tools for CX leaders to be able to drive these initiatives and get to the easy factor when some of these things aren't owned by their teams?
Right. Are you looking for specific tools like in a technology or a process? What
more like framework,
framework. Sure.
Strategy, yeah.
I'll share with you. I actually am excited. I have a new book coming out titled "I'll Be Back: How to Get Customers to Come Back Again and Again." And the final chapter is probably my favorite chapter because it's really where the rubber hits the road. And we take people through a 6-step process. And I'll go through this. I'll share it with you. It's everybody, when they want to create a better experience, where do they typically look? They look at their competitors. They go, what are our competitors doing that we're not doing? Okay. I think that's an important viewpoint, but we have to go beyond the competition. So here are the basic steps. You're going to have a meeting, and I suggest the meeting is with more than just leadership. Bring other people in from other parts of the company because you want to hear their opinions too, especially people on the front line. But here's that process. Number one, you want to ask yourself this question. Why would someone do business with me instead of my competitor? I want to know what the answer is. And I don't want you to say things like, oh, we have great people, we give great service. No, I want specifics. If you can prove to me, if you're a healthcare system and you have their big ratings company, Press Ganey, for example, if your high Press Ganey ratings are like off the charts high, if your NPS score is so much higher than your competitors, I think that's a differentiator. You just have to word it in such a way that makes the customer understand. But if you just don't say, oh, we really have good people. There was a company that had a piece of merchandise that nobody else in the world sold. Well, that's one of the differentiators. Find out why. Next, I want you, so you write all these things down. You should feel pretty good about yourself when you get good answers. Next, I want you to look at the competitor and I want you to ask the same type of question. Why would they buy from a competitor and not us? And that also allows you to look at what is that competitor doing that we're not doing, and could we be doing it? And if we can, might I suggest you don't copy it, but you copy it to a degree. You have to make it your own. Otherwise, you're just a commodity. Okay. Now, I get real excited because we start to look outside of our own industry. So we've looked at our competition. I want you to look next outside, and I want you to ask everybody the question, hey, what's your favorite company to do business with? You're going to get a lot of Amazons and a lot of big companies. But you know what you also might get? You might get that shoe repair center just down the road. You might get that restaurant that's favorite. So now you list the companies that you like to do business with, and then you give very specific reasons why. Since you brought up Amazon, I'll give you a great example of, well, what do you love about Amazon? This is what people have told me. Well, I love that I feel like I know what's going on. What do you mean? Well, the moment I place the order, I get a confirmation, an email confirmation. It came in. Then they tell me they shipped the order and they give me the shipping information and I can actually track it. And then when it shows up, they'll take a picture of it. And it's leaning against my door and they email me a picture and I know it's there. And then my Amazon Echo has a little light that comes on and tells me your package has arrived and, you know, all that, the notification. So I said, so what is it that you like about that? And what we boil it down to is, could you do that in your company? And a lot of people say, well, I don't know if we can. I go, well, let me tell you what Amazon's doing. They're giving you information. They're communicating that information. When we look at it as not just it's the emails that I like, it's really the information and the communication that I like. That's what's turning me on here. That's what's making me as a customer love them. So maybe we can create better communication with our customers. But I want you to look at, what does that shoe repair do? You know what? They always tell me it's going to be tomorrow at 5 o'clock. And it's always ready in the morning. They're never late. Okay. They're always early. Oh, could we do that for our customers? Can we create an expectation that they love and accept and then consistently exceed it? Okay. That's what that shoe repair center is doing. So what are these attributes to these companies that we love doing business with, that we list them out? What can we use in our business? And when you start looking outside of your industry, at what competitor, instead of just your competitors, now you're going to go and surpass your competition. And then finally, you go back to the first question that you had, which is, now if we implemented all of this, why would somebody do business with us? And then you'll get even more excited. And that's how you get customers to say, I'll be back.
No, I love that. And I think we talk about that a lot too. It's not just thinking about your competitors, it's the thought leaders in any industry to know what they're doing. So I'm curious, what are the companies that you look to as, you know, really differentiating themselves? You mentioned GoDaddy and a couple others, but what are some of the ones that people on this call could go kind of, you know, look at?
There's so many wonderful companies that I love to do business with. You know, I shared with you why I love GoDaddy. I love American Express. I'm an American Express card holder. I love MasterCard and Visa as well. But I pay for the higher level card because of the perks that I get. But you really don't know those perks are there unless you use them. And one of the biggest perks is calling that number to help you, if you've got a travel situation. I remember I had to get across country for a speaking engagement, and it's like 9 o'clock at night. And you know what happened? They shut down my airport because of wind. So I called American Express and I said, I need to I know you guys can help me find a private plane. I know this sounds very eccentric and very, but
normal life,
but here, no, it's not normal that I would do this, because here's what's going to happen. I'm paying for that jet.
Yeah.
Okay. Not my client. My client's expecting to pay airfare from a regular airline. but I am not going to not be there tomorrow morning. Okay. So I remember calling my client and saying, unless you hear from me sometime in the middle of the night, you need to assume I'm going to be there. American Express, this is what they did. They went to work for me and they said, you need to get a rental car or have somebody drive you to an airport that's about an hour and a half away that's still open. Okay. We will have a jet waiting for you. It's going to cost you several thousands of dollars. It was like almost $10,000 is what it was.
Oh.
And we're going to get you where you need to be. I landed and I walked into that hotel sometime around 5 a.m. And every step of the way, I call my client. But here's the cool part. American Express saved me. Okay. And they did it. And whenever I want a private jet or I want tickets to a show or a reservation, that's what that number on the back of that card is for. And they don't let you down. It's pretty much that easy. So I love companies like that. I love Zappos because even when you have a question about the product that you're seeing on their website, there's a phone number on every single page. They're easy to connect to. And that's their job. And Tony Hsieh, may he rest in peace, that was one of the things he said is, even though we're an online company, we're selling shoes. People have a lot of questions. Do the shoes run small, big? Made it as easy as possible. Talk about a user experience. Boy, I'm kind of in between sizes. And what should I do? What size are you? Well, I'm a 9, 9.5. Tell you what we're going to do. We're going to send you an 8.5, a 9, a 9.5, and a 10. You choose the one that works and you send the others back. And we're paying the shipping. Are you kidding me? That's pretty cool. That's what they do. By the way, their shoes are not the least expensive shoes out there. And there's a reason for that because people are willing to pay for that service and that usability.
I think that you touched on a few things, and it seemed like a lot of them referenced calling people. But obviously, we know that there's some users, consumers out there that prefer other channels. So
yes.
Whether it's chat or online community, what are your thoughts on how they can differentiate in some of those other channels?
Yeah, well, first of all, be where your customers are. And if you look at, and this was another question on our survey, and I'm going to try to see what's changed because I think in the last year, things have changed dramatically and people are starting to do more digital. But just last year, for example, we looked at phone, texting, email, self-service, social media, a brand app, and chatbot. And based on age, we looked at people over 40 and under 40, and people under 40 like to go to social channels. They like to direct message, or they like to just leave a message out there for the world to see, which, by the way, if there's a complaint or a problem, that makes customer service a spectator sport. That line comes to you compliments of my buddy Jay Bear. But if somebody just has a question out there, and I know we're going to be talking about the community. And this is a perfect segue. The older generation, 40 and over, their number one go-to is phone. The younger generation, their number one go-to is social media. And they're very, very close. But also right up there is texting. Self-service is still very, very important. And self-service means chatbots. It means but how about your community out there, which I think is really important. So this is a great segue into if you've got a community of evangelists, you can have them support you, help you. They'll put videos on YouTube about how they're using your product. They'll give you testimonials without you even asking. If they see somebody tweet something out, they'll jump in and if it's a positive comment, they may join in on the conversation. If it's negative, they may defend the company that they love to do business with.
I think that's great. And I know that today we definitely want to talk about the community and just kind of some of the reasons why a company should invest in building a community. I know you've touched on a few of those, but from your perspective, how important is a community, and how should leaders go about if they don't have one today? Or if they have one, but it's not really being used, how should they really focus their attention in investing into this channel?
So let's talk about communities. And the communities can be a social community, meaning it's online, it's easily accessible. There might be a Facebook community of users of your product. There could be a LinkedIn community. There could be the traditional, think about the users conference that companies have. I mean, Freshworks has a user conference, or at least they did until last year. I hope they have.
Yes, we do. Refresh.
Yeah, exactly. And the refreshed community. And what does that do? You're bringing together users of your product, aren't you, to share best practices. But as it goes to the day in and day out ongoing user experience, I want to know that if I have a question, I want to throw it out there. And even though I'm throwing it out on your community channel, I might have members of the customer community weighing in, sharing thoughts. This is really, really positive. And more companies should find ways, and part of it depends on what they do, but they should find ways to incorporate community into the customer experience.
What are some of the best companies that you have seen with communities out there and what they're doing to differentiate?
Yeah, best examples. Apple. If Apple has an online forum where you can just throw a question out there, and the Apple people actually um, share knowledge, but they'll also let the community share knowledge as well. So, and it's that's what I love. There's a great software company. I don't want to use their name just because I think that while I don't believe they compete with Freshworks, I think there's some commonality in some of what they do. But I love that when you have a question, you don't even have to go to any typical online support. You just go onto Google and you say, how do I do blank with this product? And it takes you to usually YouTube, where there are tutorials, not only from the company, but from the community members, the users. I love that. Amazon put together a community of book groups, so you can buy a book and, have discussions with other people who bought the same book. So I think those are powerful examples. Peloton. Have you used the Peloton before?
I haven't, but I know all my friends are,
they're racing people on the other side of the world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're competing in the leaderboard. It gamifies it, but it gamifies it with the community.
Absolutely. I know everybody. I want one actually just to be part of the community. Like there's a Freshworks Peloton group, and I'm like, everybody keeps talking about how they're in this group, but I'm not in it. I feel like I need to get a Peloton just to be participating in this community. I think that's a very powerful example of maybe a little bit more unique than some software and some things, but
yeah. And a PlayStation is an example of another one where you get to compete and play. And what happens is you're building this worldwide community. And think about this. If you sold me a game and I can only play in my home when my friend is next to me, but now I could play with my friend who's at his or her home, or maybe I can meet new friends on the other side of the world and compete with them on these fun games. And next thing you know, it's spreading because it's just they've done a phenomenal job. It's of making their community go viral.
What are some tips that you have though for, as a CS leader thinking about, okay, you want to build a community. How do you balance that experience of driving engagement with community users, but also making sure that we're presenting the brand experience that you want to, and that the quality and everything is at that expectation of what you guys want to deliver?
Yep. Well, let's step back. What we've just shared with you, the ideas of a Peloton or a PlayStation, or even some of the cool things that Apple and Amazon have done. Let's step back and let's talk about why a community might be important to begin with. And, like I mentioned, users conferences, it's a community group. But what we're trying to do is let's say we're not going to do any of that. How can we still get involved in the community? I believe the community of your customers is very important, and to engage with them properly is a great way of putting content out there. Today, you did it 20 years ago. There was no forum or platform to do this. Today, I can have a brand app, for example, that's free to download. And we're putting content, not just marketing content and sales content, but user-friendly, valuable content on how to best use our products. We're getting input from customers. So powerful. I'd love to talk about, and I know from the standpoint of a great case study and inner prep work for this particular chat that we're having today, you sent over a list of questions, and you actually had a suggestion of a company on this list, Harley Davidson. Now, in 1983, they were on the brink of extinction, but this had been an iconic brand in the motorcycle world. Why were they on the brink of extinction? And I actually, they were a case study in one of my books, The Amazement Revolution. They were the lead case study in the community section. Here's why. They didn't pay attention to what their community loved, and they thought they were making a better motorcycle. And they went from this big, loud, rattle and shaking, which is what you think of when you think of even today's Harley Davidson. They said, let's make something closer to the BMW. Zoom, smooth, and not so much quiet, but, fast, sleek, smooth. And, that's not what their customers wanted. That's just, and people stopped buying because they made changes without consulting their community. And they went back to the community and they said, apparently we've made an error. And what can we do to fix this error? We need you to start buying our bikes again. And they said, give us the Harley Davidson that we loved, and we'll start buying your bikes again. And basically they said, do you promise? And the customers said, yes. So they went back to creating big, loud, vibrating bikes.
And they're still around and they're doing well.
And they're stronger, a brand that's stronger than ever.
One of the things that I think is important is, in a question that came in, is how do we ensure that customers are always getting what they're looking for? How do you keep the community alive and make sure that you're always adding value, and some tips that...
So there's two questions that you have in there. First is keeping customers, and I'm looking at the thing, but let's talk about ensure they get what they're looking for first. And let's leave this up there so I can get back to the continuously engaged. It's important that every brand monitor all channels. And if you're going to have a community out there, and maybe there's a specific forum where your community's hanging out and sharing ideas, your brand has to be in there to correct what's wrong so that nobody says something that isn't right. And I'm not talking about dirty words, bad words. You've got to fix that anyway. But I'm talking about, no, that's not how our solution is supposed to work. And it won't. And if somebody else tries it, they're going to have the result of failure. We don't want that to be out there. So we've got to monitor that at all times. So that's important, monitoring. How do we ensure customers continuously engage? Because if they don't do it on their own, and eventually a large enough community will come up with topics that are great conversation starters that turn into big conversations, we've got to start those conversations, light the wick, if you will, and get them going. And so we have to have a continuous amount of content that we put out there on a regular basis that's going to get our customers to engage with us. By the way, the beautiful thing is if they're not engaging with certain parts of the content, you know that this is not of interest to them. You can pull back and you can start to see what is of interest and keep it out. Remember, when you're engaging in your community, it's not just about the opportunity to build this community to sell to them. It's about building the community to actually engage and create this experience that goes beyond just the, hey, I want you to buy what it is that I sell. We're going to take your money and ship you a product. No, we're going to create this overall experience.
How do you think that leaders should consider measuring the impact of the community then? What metrics should they look at? And obviously growth could be something from the community, but how do we translate that, and how do we know if the community is adding value, and what should we look at?
There's so many. I do this at the end of my speeches. When I do keynote speeches, I talk about numbers, and I throw a slide up behind me that has 200 ways companies measure their success, or measure something, for the support center, average wait time, numbers of, transfers, how long people are on hold, and revenue and repeat business, and, the NPS, Net Promoter Score, CSAT, friction. There's so many ways that people measure. So I like to keep it simple. I would like to look at, number one, is my community growing? Okay. Just like you want to look at repeat business or any kind of business, is your revenue in business growing? That's a good indicator. At least something's right. What's the churn rate in a regular business in marketing and sales? Well, what's your churn rate on your community? How many people are growing versus how many people are dropping off? I think that's another indication as to whether or not your community is successful or not. Here's what I want you to think about. The concept of community and engagement brings us closer to creating loyalty. Loyalty is not based on, I just like your product, because most of the time your product can be bought or something very close to it by a number of different places, vendors, if you're in the B2B world, retailers, if you're in the B2C world. So the question is, if why are we keeping our customers coming back, and are we creating loyalty, which is an emotional connection? The community, and when we interact with our customers, are allowing us to create that emotional connection that we can't get in a basic transaction.
Really good points. Thank you. And I know that one of the things that that we have, the question we have up there is how do we okay, sorry. So the next question we had come in was, when you're just starting off and you're in like a nascent stage of having a community, how do you go from 0 community members to at least that first batch that you can kind of start? You mentioned going viral with your community. I know the Freshworks community is relatively new. What are some tips that you have? I think you kind of addressed some, like adding value and content, but are there any very specific tips you can give to those who are just starting with a community right now?
Yeah. So, I would, number one, I would take a look at, are you already a part? Just like we had that little 6-step process that I talked about, and I would do something very similar to that, and saying, what other industries or what other communities am I a part of, or what are other industries doing? And I would take a look at that and see, okay, which one of these do I like, and why do I like them? Be very careful, because you want to make sure you go where your customers are going.
Right.
If you can create, you could create a forum on your own platform. Personally, I'd like to see people migrate to a more public platform, which allows others outside, prospects of your business, to look and see what's going on and just be a fly on the wall and observe. If you bring it into a private channel, it's not going to happen. So I would say start by looking at other communities and seeing what it is that you like. And then I would say, where do you start? I wouldn't go to a bunch of different channels. I would start in the main channel you want and grow there. I would promote properly, and the way to promote is by giving value-added content. I've created a nice community for my business simply by, I know it's segmented a little bit. I know if you take a look at my Twitter community has over 100,000 followers. And I also have a YouTube community that has, I don't know, 11, 12,000 subscribers, maybe, I don't know, something like that. So where are your people, and where do you want to go first, and what makes the most sense? If I'm into loving video and my customers seem to like that, then I might go on YouTube and just put in all this value-added content, encourage them to subscribe, encouraging them to communicate and give me feedback. And I can move some of that over to LinkedIn if I wanted to, because I've got people on LinkedIn, and I could post my video through LinkedIn and create comments in a forum there. So it's all about engagement. It's all about the interaction that you have. It's two-way, not one-way. So put it out there, get the comments, and respond to those comments when appropriate. Very important to do. We always tell people, if you're in the customer service world, if you're getting a bad review, you need to respond to all bad reviews, to at least acknowledge, say you're sorry, take it offline, let's get it worked on. But what about the good reviews? Ideally, you're getting a whole lot more good reviews than bad reviews. You should respond to those as well. Say thank you. If it's something interesting, engage with them. Ask them a question. That may spark conversations coming from others.
What do you think about the role of gamification in a community? Do you feel like it's important to have that promotion of, like, if you stay engaged and you become a, top contributor or something like that, to help people feel like there's a benefit?
There's a reward. There's a carrot at the end of that stick, right? What do you think Peloton has done, and PlayStation? They've gamified it. I mean, PlayStation is a game, but Peloton is just. I mean, you get on your bike, and now Peloton has, I believe it's Peloton, has this. It looks like a mirror that you can see yourself exercising. I think it's Peloton, or is it Nordic Trek? Doesn't matter. It's an amazing thing. But in the middle of it's like a TV set, and your instructor is just like you're on the Peloton, but you can see yourself. And now you're doing workouts beyond just the bike. You're able to really do all types of aerobic type exercises, yoga classes, and you feel like you're connected to others. That's the key in this whole community thing, that word connection. I've used it several times throughout this conversation, but you want to connect. When you connect the right way, you connect on an emotional level. One other comment I'll make about this is that some people see what they're doing is kind of a loyalty program, creating this community. And it is in a form creating loyalty, but I love what Nike has done. That's a great brand that's kind of combined what I call their loyalty program with community. First of all, it's very easy. You don't just want to know your customer today. You want to know what bucket they fall into. Well, Nike has shoes for runners, shoes for basketball players, shoes for, all kinds of different reasons, soccer shoes. If I buy running shoes, they're probably not going to promote basketball court shoes, are they? They know that about me. So they're going to engage me with content that is only about my interest. So that's another piece of it is segmenting your communities based on their interests. So I know that Freshworks has a number of different offerings. And by the way, you had no idea that I was going to say that, and but you do. And I know that when you were considering me as a speaker at one of your events, you were only considering me for the contact center side of what you do for that customer service. And I said, well, maybe we need to look at the others, because there's you can do that, but you have segmented your customers. You know what they want. And I think that's real important. So if you've got customers that just want basketball shoes, make sure you create a channel that's just for those that love basketball.
What do you think about, a lot of the examples are great, but a lot of them are B2C, where it's somebody's personal interest, and it's something that it's easier to speak to emotionally because it's their hobby or free time. What about when you think about the B2B side, where it's something that they're maybe not as passionate about, but you want that level of engagement?
I believe it's almost even more important in the B2B world to be doing this the right way. So a step back a moment, and we talked about people leaving online, comments, complaints, negative reviews. Well, in the B2B world, there's not a public forum per se like there is for TripAdvisor or Yelp or even Google. But what happens is there's industry forums, and this is where if there's whatever the widget industry probably has the ability for customers of different companies to leave comments about what's going on. That's an offering that the association is providing their industry members. So here's the problem with B2B that I think makes it more important than ever. If I walk into a mall, okay, and I want to buy this sport jacket or something like it, I can go to 20 different stores. You've got your major big anchor stores like the big department stores and all these smaller specialty stores. But if I want to buy, I don't know, some piece of equipment, okay, there's a pretty good chance that I can't walk into a mall and find 20 stores within, walking distance. No, there's probably 3 to 5 in the entire industry that are going to vie for my business. And as a result, if I choose to do business with somebody else, that company that was trying to get me, it's going to be a while before I have a chance to do business with them again. I have a client that's in the robotics industry, and they create this unbelievably huge equipment. It's not replaced every year. It's replaced every 15 to 20 years. And they get maintenance contracts, which allow them to make money throughout that 20 years. But guess what happens if you make a mistake in the user experience, the customer experience, and you turn off the customer and they go to the competition? They don't get a shot at getting that business back for an entire generation.
And by then, those will still be even, different products by then or needs. Mm-hmm. So when we think, for example, Freshworks, we have like this online forum and community where people come to this site and they can add posts and people can communicate and answer questions, etc. So when we think about that, what are some of the tips on how we measure the impact of a community, measure the online community impact in customer experience?
Okay, so we talked a little bit about watching the people that engage.
Yeah.
Higher engagement is obviously showing some success. If you can actually know who your community is, get them to become a member of the community. And when I say member, it's not like they're just showing up, it's a membership. Nike's loyalty program is a membership program. Amazon Prime, their loyalty program is really a membership program that is actually paid for. Okay. Which, by the way, that's another thing. If you can convince your community to pay to be a member of your community, chances are they're going to try to get the value out of that because they're paying money for it, which will be a little bit sticky. Okay. But you got to give them the goods. You got to give them the value. So I think if you see back to what we just mentioned, if you see engagement at a higher level, you'll be able to see what's resonating, what's not. You'll be able to track the community, track the engagement, track the numbers that are joining the community. That's where, and of course, I want you to look at that churn. We talked about that a little while ago. Who's fallen off the community? Today, let's just, you have the ability to know when somebody's watched your video. You don't know who's watched your video, but you have the ability, YouTube and Google have given you analytics that allow you to know when somebody's watched a video, when you can watch the engagement, you can, on Twitter, you can see the impressions. This is what you need to be tracking. Data is so important.
Yeah. What do you think? What are some tips that you have for CS leaders to secure the budget if they don't have an investment in a community today? Because like you said, it's a two-way engagement. You can't just put it out there and leave it. You have to have staff there to be able to communicate and continue driving the content. So any tips on securing that budget within leadership?
Sure. And it's real simple. Anytime you go to leadership, there has to be numbers involved. Because if you're going to go to them and say, I want to spend money on something, they go, okay, what's in it for us? Okay, what's the ROI? So I would take a look. There's plenty of stats and facts out there that will tell you about companies that have a good community and companies that don't, what the community means, the value in sales, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's so many ways that you can prove ROI. Now that's generic. And then you go and say, okay, so we've got a customer. Let's just make up some numbers. We've got a customer base of 1,000 customers, okay? And we don't do a community thing. But what would happen? We can prove that when you have a community, your retention rate is increased by 8%. What would happen if we were able to retain 8% of the customers that would churn out after a year or whatever the cycle is? What would that mean dollar-wise to us? Mm-hmm. There's a pretty good chance that that will far exceed the investment you're trying to make. Not that long ago, probably about 2 months ago, we engaged with a client who they're thinking about doing our customer service training. And I said, well, let's talk about how many customers do you lose every year? What's your turnover? And it was pretty high. And I said, what if we could increase that loyalty or that repeat customer by, say, 5%? What would that mean to you? And my client, she said, that would be like millions of dollars. I said, could I work on a percentage of that success instead of charging a daily fee for our trainers? And she laughed. But it went, when we looked at it from that approach, it was like a no-brainer for them to decide this is a good investment. I want you to do the same thing anytime you go to the C-suite. Have your data with you. You want generic data, then how does it apply to you? What would that scenario look like if we did it right and we had the success that we expect to have? And that will give you a better chance at getting that budget approved.
Those are great tips. Thank you for sharing. And I guess one other thing is, how can CS leaders get a seat at the table? I know that a lot of times that's something that the support can, or experience can struggle with is how do we make sure, I think it's obviously coming in, and when you do go in, be prepared, have that data, show ROI, and then deliver on that ROI. But are there other tips for just getting that seat in the first place?
Well, if the seat's not already there, given the whole concept of the importance of the customer experience, I can't imagine what company wouldn't want somebody in that high-level position, the chief experience officer. Sometimes they say it falls under marketing. So your CMO is sometimes the eyes and ears of the CX and the CS experience, the customer service experience. So I think we've got to make the argument, and actually, I'm going to turn one on. I'm going to give you a little twist here. We make the argument we need somebody there that can bring what's happening and be able to make suggestions and the investments that need to be made to not just keep up, but hopefully, be a little bit above the curve or ahead of the curve. But I would suggest that you take your leaders and you put them in positions so they would understand why it's important. And, my whole world, even though I do a lot in the customer experience world, I'm also big in customer service. So I say, hey, let's take Mr. or Mrs. Important or Ms. Important, whatever, and take them out of their C-suite pretty office and put them on the front line, shadowing a support rep. So back in the 1980s, when I wrote my first book, Moments of Magic, Anheuser-Busch was one of my case studies, or actually just a great story, and that they required every executive at a certain level to spend 1 day a quarter on the front line. And the front line might be, for some, it might have been actually in the support area, but it also meant going out in the field, driving around with a truck driver who drops off beer, going out to a salesperson that's calling on the new hotel that's being built, and hearing in real time, in the real world, what the feedback is. So many times these decisions are being made in the C-suite without the C-suite being acutely aware of what's going on at all these different areas of the company. So bring them. It's like they should be mystery shopping their own company, okay? But they should also be on the front line hearing what customers say. In that book, I'll Be Back, I tell the story about how there was an executive at Microsoft that said, I want to go down and take a couple of support calls. I want to hear what our customers are saying. And he answered the phone. Hello, Microsoft customer support. This is William. May I help you? And it was William, as in Bill Gates, actually down there on the front line, one of the richest men in the world, answering a customer support call. And the funny end of this story is somebody that he supported called back later, was talking to somebody and said, I just was talking to this gentleman yesterday. What a lovely man. His name was William. He was so helpful. Is there any chance I can talk to him again?
That's an amazing story. One of the things that we do, it's not within the customer support service calls, but we had started a program called Exec Connect, where every single member of our C-suite is assigned to customers so that they have those, occurring calls with them. Some of our top customers, but they can basically go through and hear the voice of the customer. So when they're making decisions, they can imagine so-and-so's face and the pains that they're experiencing or the things that they value. Really just having that vision and that voice of customer, I think, is essential.
It is essential. And I think it's really powerful. It's almost like they're an extension of the account executive on that for that customer, which is wonderful because they get that. But I think it's important to be anonymous too. I think to be able to shadow somebody who's actually talking to the support people, talking to their customer. And again, I use shadow because I'm thinking the customer support world, you're sitting next to somebody, you have your headset on, you're watching the screens. Maybe it's, but somebody to see and hear what, and then, because I know this, if you put somebody on the C-suite in front of my customer, I'm the account exec, my demeanor toward the customer, I might act differently than if that leader was not sitting next to me. I hope that wouldn't be the case, but that could be the case. My customer may not say things to me knowing that this is the leader that, so we need to be very, very careful. And I've seen it happen. I've said to a customer, are you willing to get up in front of this group of people, some of which are executives of the company, and share what you just told me? Oh, absolutely. So I asked them that question straight out on the panel, and they won't even come close to the answer. They get all of a sudden they're a lot more pleasant about it. And so, it's like, no, these people need to hear it. So there's something we called Focus on the Customer Live. And it's a great program to put in front of all of leadership and salespeople and marketing people of a company. And we bring up, say, 4 customers and 2 current customers, 1 prospect, and 1 that's defected and left because they weren't happy. And I want that person that's willing to be honest about why they left so that the audience can hear what's going on. And by the way, we don't want somebody that's going to come and slam us.
Yeah.
We want somebody that's going to give us really true constructive feedback. And even that prospect that's thinking about using us at that point is going, this company had the guts to put me next to a customer that left.
Yeah.
Wow. This is the kind of company I want to do business with.
Is that something that you could imagine happening within the community, like an online community forums type of thing? Or do you feel like that's something that's really more kind of behind closed doors with your
well,
leadership
actually, I
and
love the
customers?
idea of, wouldn't it be cool if, hey, we're doing the community event right now, right?
Yeah.
This is it. So why not say, hey, next week we're going to have a panel of customers. There's going to be 3 customers, actually 2 customers. One customer that we have been doing business with for years that loves us. One that is thinking about doing business with us and is looking at our competitors as well. And we're going to have a customer that we used to do business with and has left us for the competition. We're going to find out why they love us, why they're thinking about us, and why they don't. Stay tuned. Come back next week. Exciting program.
Yeah. All right. Freshworks community team, let's get on that.
All right.
Well, thank you so much, Shep. It was a wonderful joy speaking with you today. And thank you all who joined in for our first fireside chat. I think that we are about at time, so really appreciate it. It was really nice chatting with you.
It's my pleasure, and I look forward to the next time we do this. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you.